All right, you guys, we're on in 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
More like 30 seconds.
I was just there 3 weeks ago.
Going again on Saturday.
Nice. Where do you stay?
Royale.
Okay. Where do I stay? Well, my family used to live there. So, yeah, so I still got a lot of friends.
Oh, wow. How awesome.
Yeah, they lived there for about 4 years. And they used
All right,
to
everybody.
here in the U.S. Love it. There. The food's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you for your patience with us. We actually were waiting for this illustrious panel in another room, so we are delighted to be here. Let's get going. I think we're going to have a really engaging panel on the power of YouTube and monetization and all the other ecosystem opportunities that YouTube has represented from a digital platform point of view. My name is Jeffrey Thompson. I'll be today's moderator. My hope is that we have a nice, thorough debate on some of the opportunities and challenges that the digital platforms like YouTube provide. I am delighted to be here with an illustrious panel of what I would consider something that is reflective of what's happening in television, film, and digital media. And that is the combination of technology tied to content creation. And I think that we have software leaders on this panel that are developing softwares that help you fund your business and help you track analytics of your audiences, all the way through Univision, which would be considered one of the largest networks in the United States. So without further ado, let me just tell you top line. We're going to have what we think is an interesting conversation. I'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions. Feel free to put those down. If there's any burning questions that just you have to answer, I'm happy to answer them, but we have some questions that we really want to get to. So bear with me as we get going here. Just to give you a brief introduction, my name is Jeffrey Thompson again. I am with IBM. I am in the global services platform business, which means that we do consulting for the entertainment business. We own companies like Aspera, Clearleap for OTT streaming, the Weather Channel for analytics anywhere in the world, and a number of other companies, Clearleap, et cetera. Why am I saying that? Because I started my career in the entertainment at Disney, at the Walt Disney Company for 11 years. Had one television show on ABC Family, so I've been a content creator, but I've also been a bit on the business side of entertainment. And television as we know it is shifting very rapidly, and every time a shift like this occurs, it gives you the opportunity to monetize, and I think that's what this panel represents. I'm delighted to have Style Hall on the panel because when I went to Condé Nast to launch Condé Nast Entertainment, companies like Style Hall were just getting started and have been important contributors in advancing fashion and the affinity for different groups across fashion and entertainment. So now you've heard enough from me. This is the most I hope I'll be talking. What I'd like to do is introduce what I think is a really great panel. Let's keep this free flowing, and I'm talking fast for a reason because I think that we want to show some excitement and some eagerness as we get going. So Josh Kreitzman, I would like you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your company, and then any other tidbit about the industry that is interesting for you. And we'll go down the row so you guys can get ready here.
Sure. I'm Josh with Aboutjookin Media. Aboutjookin Media is a global media company, and we believe that the future of entertainment and storytelling are user-generated. We make user-generated video content commercially available for media networks, advertising agencies, content creators and television productions to use in their own work. We also have a small handful of brands that we own and operate that do about 1.5 billion views a month with 60 million fans. Those brands are Fail Army, Aboutjookin Video, People Are Awesome, and The Pet Collective, and a couple of others. Those are on a bunch of platforms. YouTube is where they were all born, which is part of why this is especially relevant to us. We've built formats for those brands that now live on television, OTT, and social platforms. And I specifically work on the brand side of the business, the owned and operated portfolio brands.
Great, thank you. And you're producing TV shows.
Yep.
All right, Rebecca. Give us a top line.
I am the head of digital, and I also do some long-form development for Vindobona Productions. We make America's Funniest Home Videos, so it's pretty much everything he said, but sub America's Funniest Home Videos in there. We do pretty much a very similar thing. We have a lot of O&Os on YouTube, Cute When Fail, Cute Kids, America's Funniest Home Videos, Best of AFE, Funny Clips Daily, Fail Clips Daily, etc. So we've been doing home video since the beginning, and we're still doing it and creating other television shows out of that.
Wait a minute, and you're missing the fact that you're the longest running primetime television show?
That's right, 25 years, us and The Simpsons, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah,
You were around when video was video.
that's
There we
right. I wasn't exactly.
None of us were, we get it. Jennifer, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Jen Perry from Univision. Univision is the leading network for Hispanic America. Although we do compete very well in general market, when you look at our ratings on television, we compete with Fox, CBS, NBC. I head up the Univision Creator Network, which is the influencer program at Univision. There are two reasons why we launched this program. Number one, talent discovery. And when I say talent, I just don't mean people who stand in front of the camera, but I mean the future storytellers, the producers, the writers. These are the people we want to start connecting with in an earlier place. And we're not just finding those people anymore through agents or through casting calls. It's really through this amazing platform that we have, like YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat. The other piece of it is for sales opportunities. Univision has one of the biggest sales forces when it comes to Hispanic America. So we don't just want to sell television and radio, which we're able to sell really well. It's also pretty easy to add another line and sell DFP and a pre-roll for a lot of our influencers. So a lot of our influencers who join get this amazing opportunity to be on multi-platforms, television, radio, but they also get to see a really nice bump in their earnings.
So Univision, I knew it as Univision until I met Jennifer. So, but I want to be clear. You know, you've always had the big networks: ABC, NBC, Fox, and CBS, right? Univision, we got this, you know, through her PR people, but it's really important you realize the power of the multicultural market. They're reaching 108 million unduplicated people now, and 91% of the United States. I want to say it's 3 or 4 weeks, I'm messing this up, but it's like 3 or 4 weeks a year, they're the #1 network in the United States, beating all of the other networks. So it's very, you know, in American, non-Spanish speaking, we tend to not know some of these things, and it's a very powerful opportunity. So thank you for being here. We'll dig into the influencer network soon. Rena, let's go.
Hi, my name is Rena Liebling. I'm the VP of Partner Strategy at King Community, meaning I basically manage all things talent related. So we are a digital media and entertainment company that aims to inspire women around the world through high-end video content and our community of creators. We also have an in-house studio that we use to create custom content for brands and for our own O&O properties. So we have our own accounts on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc. So we sort of originated as an MCN, which is kind of a dirty word now, so I'll try not to use it. And we've evolved into sort of a larger scale digital media company, which means that we create our own IP and content that we can distribute. But we certainly haven't abandoned our network. It's still the core of our business. It still basically fuels most of our branded content and our relationships with large brands. And we work with everyone from large CPG brands to auto, to beauty, really you name it. They sort of work with us on larger brand opportunities that are also multi-platform. That's Kim.
That's great. And all created by YouTube, because of YouTube?
So we definitely started out on YouTube, and I would say as the market has shifted and as the platform has shifted, we've been looking to alternative platforms. So we've made a large investment in Facebook content and have sort of encouraged the creators in our network to do the same.
Fantastic. How many content creators are in the audience? So we got some creators. How many content producers or monetizers, content distributors? So we got a lot of creators. This is good. This panel will be good for you because we're going to be talking about, just how content creation is shifting because of digital platforms. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Sean.
Hi, hello. Is this working? Yeah, I guess it is. I'm Sean Horvath. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Style Hall. I'm responsible for creating innovative ad products for brands as well as creating innovative solutions for our creators. And the other 70% of my job is ad sales, running our international and U.S. Ad sales teams. So similar to Kin, Style Hall in its infancy was a multi-channel network focused on the style-obsessed female 18 to 34. Probably about 2 years ago, the company, after Bertelsmann bought them, started to pivot their focus and start to look more towards being a marketing services solution for clients. So really, I think as we look into this rest of this year, the coming year, our focus has been partnering with clients, working with them on the creation of their own influencer networks and supporting that, as well as the creation of data products that enables them to look at the sphere of influence that an influencer has, as well as that their audience has, and then really helping them build the building blocks of how you talk to content creators and how you work with them stronger. So really changing that business model. Now, that's not to say we've shifted away from the creator model. It's still the bread and butter of the company. But not looking at it just from a YouTube perspective, but looking at it overall from a content perspective and how we can monetize their content and their platform and help them grow it.
Tell them what your second biggest platform is.
Instagram, yeah. I mean, just overall from, and then again, similar as Lauren just said for Ken, I don't know if it's not necessarily shifting off YouTube, but you're ultimately seeing stronger and stronger engagements on Instagram stories and an aspect. And ultimately, creators are also looking at Instagram as just as much of a priority for telling stories as they do on YouTube. It used to be kind of a second piece, an amplification of their YouTube content, but now much more they're looking at it as a mainstream way to communicate storytelling.
Great, thank you. Jason, or James, forgive me.
All my close friends call me Jason. I'm James Creech. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Paladin. We build enterprise software for the future of media. So we power digital media companies in all domains across platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. Our platform is designed to create productivity and workflow tools. So I tell our clients, at the end of the day, we're here to save you time or help you scale your business. We operate across 5 continents, power about 50 different global media companies, from multi-channel networks to more traditional players, influencer marketing agencies, and digital publishers.
That's great. Let me start by saying this. ESPN was bought by Disney in 1992, I believe. It has powered the stock, powered the growth of Disney. One channel, ESPN. The power of digital and the growth of these platforms and the shifting of eyeballs to digital platforms is a lag on Disney stock right now. Their subscribers have dropped because consumers have other opportunities and other competition. YouTube, there's an argument, was the start of this, and then all of the companies that are here, for the most part, were an extension, leverage that platform to monetize. So you content creators out there, this will be an interesting panel for you, because on what James just said about helping these guys monetize by tracking royalties, by paying content creators, by creating the software, that's the need for that kind of software didn't exist prior to YouTube creating a user-generated model that allows anybody to pick up a camera and be a superstar in their world and drive a particular audience. So I'm going to stop here because I know that you have enough of me, but look at Awesomeness TV, which was started by Brian Robbins, sold to DreamWorks. Then half of that was sold to Time Warner, and then DreamWorks was just bought by NBC Universal. So now Awesomeness TV is part of NBC Universal. Maker, bought by Disney. These are all multi-channel networks or some YouTube affiliation. Most of them have been acquired. And that's, we're here to talk about the future of entertainment and how we monetize going forward. So I hope you take the spirit of that. All right, so let's keep going here. Of that, I'm going to say, Rebecca, you guys have had, at Vindobona Productions, have had to reinvent yourselves multiple times. You have a leading TV show that's remained on air. But you mentioned all these other ancillary products that seem to be quite digital. Can you talk about the transformation to the digital process and the innovation process that you have to go through so that you're not stuck with just videos?
Sure. I think we were a little late to the YouTube game, quite frankly, but because of the scale and just vastness of our library, which again was the stroke of genius by our creator, that all of our video we own it outright. We're able to scale and build very quickly on YouTube. So, we will take and package our content differently on digital than we would for the show. I would say even the AFE brand on digital is edgier than the show AFE itself, because we are playing to that, often 13 to 17-year-old audience on YouTube that, they're cord cutters. They may never watch the broadcast show. So it's definitely a brand extension. We definitely have peeled that onion and created different categories, and then really scaled those categories as well, dependent upon different platforms, though I almost think things are becoming somewhat platform agnostic, meaning that you have a brand and it has to be able to go everywhere social first. So does that answer the question? Yeah, I think you have to just be organic to the platform, and you can't be the exact same TV show that may play to an older audience, because all of TV does now. You have to take that and modify it and do it organically to the platform that you're speaking to.
And how many countries do you guys doing business in, roughly?
I think it's like 127 territories, something like that. Mhm.
So where I was getting at, to your point, which is you own your content. However you get it, you own it, and you look for ways to monetize it, and as platforms shift, you monetize it across those platforms.
That's right. A lot of times in the industry, we're called the franchise, because we really do franchise the product internationally and, definitely distribute it across every platform possible.
Josh, at Jukin, you're doing some of the same things. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. So our brands all started in digital. The licensing part of the business, which is the original way that the company was started, was to provide television productions with the clip content they needed for, that genre of programming. We made that content available for potential licensees in a number of places, including a YouTube channel, just so that we'd have a place to point them to. They found the content they were looking for, as did a whole bunch of people that were not potential licensees, and a bunch of YouTube channels came out of that. So the two parts of the business work together, pretty well, but they're very different in terms of the audiences. So what you said about the brand needing to reflect an edgier tone on digital versus television, like, we see the same thing. Fail Army, our biggest brand, was born on YouTube, and after growing to a 10 million plus subscribed channel on YouTube, we expanded to a bunch of different platforms and developed a TV show that's now in over 200 markets. And so it kind of is the reverse of what you mentioned, but it's absolutely the same space that we're playing in.
Yeah, you're evolving. Jennifer, so Univision, you guys have made a lot of bets. You do a ton of the traditional telenovos, but you also do a lot of sports. You're responsible for the influencer network. What's keeping you up at night? What are the challenges that are going on in creating a digital network and an influencer network, and then expanding that? And then how does that apply to what these guys might be thinking about?
Yeah, I think, Rena, you touched on it. I think when I first came on to launch the network, I came on as a consultant, and Univision was considering, should we buy a network? Should we launch a network? What does that look like? And I told them, give me a fraction of what you would use to acquire something, and I will buy you value. Because the real value is finding those partnerships and those voices that really fit and align with who Univision is and who Univision is becoming. And you don't need 50,000 channels to do that. We actually only have 200. And by the end of the year, I think we're actually going to go down to 150. Just because as we've sort of been able to make a name for ourselves in the space, we've had creators who have grown over time. And we also have had creators approach us who want to join. So we've been in a really great position because when we first did go out, the MCN word was a dirty word. And there has been this sort of sense of, well, what does an MCN do for me? And I said, well, as Univision, we could put you on TV tomorrow. Like tomorrow, it's gonna knock on a door. So I think for all of us, it's really figuring out what is this next phase, because the whole MCN thing is not cool anymore. And we need to do more than that. I think right now we're seeing a lot of content development. I sort of compare it to 5 or 6 years ago when YouTube gave out that $100 million for original content, and everyone got in the game. I think that's sort of, it's like a new version of that with all the premium series. You have Go 90, you have YouTube Red, you have full screen. So I think for everyone who's focused on the influencer side and on the digital content side, that is sort of like the next big thing that you want to attach yourself to.
So do you, like, to go back to the creative side of it, your content producers, since you have a network and then you're tied to a broadcast network and a distribution network, do you actively, or your teams actively recommend or push them to move to other parts of the business?
Definitely, and you see the integrations actually across what we already do. So for example, we have a show called Premios Juventud, which is essentially the Teen Choice Awards for Hispanic America. And what we did is we took most of our influencers and tried to find a way to incorporate them, whether that meant having a viewing party here in LA or flying some of them out to walk the red carpet, and have some of them present on air. So really finding ways that they can evolve their career and their reach. Also with our branded content opportunities, we really try to do truly multi-platform campaigns. So for example, last year we did something with Universal with the Huntsman, and what we did is we took 2 of our influencers, we had them create original content on their YouTube channels. Then they went to one of our most popular reality shows, and were backstage with the girls, got a moment on air. So you really got native content on each platform, and I think Universal was really happy with what they were able to get from that.
So partnerships are really important.
Yes.
We'll dig into that in a minute, because I'd like to. Rena, the content community networks, you guys are good at helping your communities, your creative communities monetize content, develop content. Can you talk a little bit about how different that is from what Jennifer's doing at Univision?
I don't think it's that different. It sounds like we have pretty similar jobs. And the things that are keeping her up at night keep me up at night. You know, in order to maintain our network and the strength of our network, we need to continue to bring value to our community. And I need to make sure that we're constantly thinking of ways to do that. And obviously helping them monetize their content is one of those ways. So, you know, we can't do that without a strong sales team, which is something that we've spent a really long time building. So we've strategically placed sellers in the markets with the brands that have the most desire to have content online. So that's Chicago, where you have sort of CPG brands and auto and big box stores. New York, where you have lots of the beauty and fashion brands. And then LA, where all the studios and big agencies are based. And so creating year-long or months-long partnerships for the creators in our network so that they can have a steady paycheck is a really sort of obvious value add. And then as a network, you know, one of the things that you get when you become an MCN is you can either co-sell with Google, or you can create your own custom pre-roll, which I know you mentioned you do, and you can run ads, whether it's display ads or pre-roll across your network at a much higher premium than the ads that are sold at auction on the AdSense market. And the monthly earnings of the creators in your network get a very, very high bump when that happens. So those are the 2 real sort of financial ways we help the creators in our network.
That's great, thank you. Sean, you're the Chief Innovation Officer at Style Hall. Style Hall's been around. You've 75% of sales go through you. You're looking for innovation and distribution. Can you talk about some of the gaps in the market that are challenging right now and limiting growth, or opportunities that you see that people are not, you know, companies like yours are just haven't been able to capture?
Yeah. Well, I think just overall the marketplace for influencer marketing has been challenged, right? As a lot of people on the panel have already said, how a advertiser or a client sources those influencers varies greatly. Now, it used to be they would automatically come to the MCN, right? That model is kind of broken apart, so the clients are looking towards social agencies, towards almost programmatic types of buying of influencers, looking at it that way, to trying to do it themselves, right? With that, and all of them, to some extent, are doing it, I think, somewhat successfully, right? But a lot of it is without knowledge or without data. So they're kind of archaic in the thinking of exactly what the MCNs did 5 years ago to build their model. I think a lot of people are doing that now versus them building a model that should be built at this time, right? And that model is really using the analytics. If you're on YouTube, the CMS, right? That back-end analytic is a highly valuable data tool for any of us that have access to it. So if you're a creator and you're not signed with, let's say, a partner that helps you manage that, how are you really going to grow your business? Unless you have the analytical tool, or if you've got someone like Lauren or someone else that's really going to be smart to guide you in that, you're kidding yourself to think that you're really going to, or that your manager in Hollywood be able to guide that, because their job is not analytics. Their job is not to build your audience. Their job is to get you a quick paycheck, and they'll typically move on quickly after that, right? So I think the value that we all provide is great, still, probably even more so than it was 5 years ago, but the value that we have to provide to the creators is the data, and how you use that data to help grow their audiences, how you use that data to look at content threads and trends that are happening, and then ultimately from the sales perspective is how you work with the client to use that data to help them build their influence, right? To start to analyze a campaign on Instagram or YouTube and know where it fell off. Yes, it's fine to have an average engagement of 3% and to have a whole bunch of likes, but if that conversation has stopped right there and not actually carried a full, kind of circle of spheres almost, think about it as like a rock in a puddle. You drop a rock in a puddle, and it's going to break apart really fast the larger the rock. You've got to have a lot of different layers of conversation carry out. Data can enable you to do that. So building the tools has been really kind of, I think, our success.
So stop me for a sec. So some of the content creators that are here in the audience, what should they be looking at? Like we talked earlier about sentiment analysis, is a good example. Like what should they, like if you gave them, just the top 3 roadmap for analytics that they should be looking at, what should that be? And by the way, I'm going to get to James, you the moneymaker in a minute.
I think you might say something differently coming from a talent perspective, from a sales perspective, right? I think, engagement obviously still is always incredibly important, right? And looking at having a higher benchmark than the benchmark that's set on that platform, whether it's YouTube or Instagram, you always want to have a higher engagement. And really knowing, I think, also what your audience likes, right? I think a lot of times creators get into the space and they start into the space as a beauty creator when no difference than TV, there's audience fatigue. And you can only make so many how-to videos or tutorials on beauty that you've got to be able to look at the analytics of your audience and pick up when their audience is starting to fall off, and maybe you start to create new genres of topics, right? So if you're a beauty influencer and all of a sudden you've become a mom or you're buying a house, you're entering a next stage in your life. Your audience wants to follow you. They like you. They may love your beauty, but they also watch because of you, right? So giving them the tools to help them monitor that and show them how they can grow their audience and content verticals is something that's a great value that, whether it's Style Hall or Univision or Kin, it's all a value that we can provide to creators.
That's great. James, what would you add? Because you're the secret sauce, because you're talking BI, business intelligence, and a whole bunch of other things. What would you add to that?
Yeah, Sean made some phenomenal points, and there's a lot there. So first thought I had was, one, you're absolutely right that the influencer marketing space has become fragmented. And that's actually created, in many cases, a negative experience on both ends of the value chain, right? It's tougher for brands to realize, how do I need to do a buy, right? Do I want to leverage a trusted partner like an MCN or a digital media company, an agency? Do I want to try and go directly to the creators or take advantage of a platform? And then you have influencers on the other end saying, well, there's hundreds of these influencer marketing platforms now. Which ones do I need to be on? What type of information do I share? How do I, transact these type of relationships? And I think in most cases, they often do create these negative experiences because the expectations are not managed on both sides, right? It's very tough for a large-scale talent to do a successful influencer campaign on a programmatic platform, right? That's why you need trusted partners with the data and the expertise to make sure that the fit is the right match between an influencer and the brand, and to shepherd the whole process to make sure it's successful. The second thing that we look at Paladin is how do you leverage the data? What's the right information to measure success for a campaign? And again, as everyone has touched on, it differs based on the platform, right? Success on YouTube is not going to give you the same formula for success on Facebook or Instagram. So you have to take a very unique and measured approach to creating content and promoting it on different platforms. That said, I think some of the commonalities we see across platforms, number one is the importance of looking at the audience information. And that's where the difference between publicly available data, top-line measurements like views, subscribers, or follower count on a platform, is very different than private data, right? The authenticated data that a platform can expose to you and that a creator or brand can see if they're logged in behind their dashboard. And so with private data like audience information, who's watching the content, how old are they, where are they based, that's the first thing you need to make sure is a fit for the brand. It doesn't matter if you have great views and engagement if a bunch of people are watching your content in Russia and it's not a match for what the brand is trying to sell, right? So audience is first. Number two is certainly engagement. I think that's incredibly important. But how do you measure that, right? Is it likes, dislikes, comments, sharing? That varies based on the brand and the category. Then the third thing is probably unique viewership, right, or unique reach, because that's still the way advertising is bought and sold. If you go and try and buy TV inventory, try and buy out of home, traditional digital, if we can call it that now, it's all bought on a unique reach or viewership metric. So keeping in mind audience, engagement, and uniques is critical.
That's great. Thank you for that. I want to go back to Rena for a minute because to his point, actually to the last 2 points, at Kin, you guys spend a lot of time with affinity, and you spend a lot of time in the space. And earlier you were talking about doing branded or campaigns that monetize a lot better because you bring the partnership in. Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that? And the reason I'm dovetailing here is because there was something else that you said earlier, and it was about the fact that now people come in, they shouldn't just have their content, but they should have their marketing plan. Was that you or Jennifer? It was one of you two. So can you talk, but it's shifting how we produce content, how we monetize it, how we get it greenlit. Can you talk a little about that? And Jennifer, you can clean up if you want on this as well.
Yeah, so I think Sean mentioned the value of the CMS. I mean, that's the most valuable thing we have at Kin. And just as like a very cursory explanation, Kin is a network. We have 150 plus channels in our network. They're the top women's lifestyle channels, other than those on Style Hall. And when they join Kin, they join our back end, meaning I can see every single thing that channel can see when they log in. I can see their watch time. I can see how much money they made on a video. I can see the retention of a certain video. I can see their average retention and their retention on a very granular level on a video by video basis. So when a brand comes to us and they want to work with someone who has, a 50% video retention rate and reaches a very specific type of audience, whether that's, primarily female, a very specific age, in a very specific geographic location, we can promise them that. I can guarantee them that they will get at least this many views from at least this many women in the age bracket of 18 to 24 in the U.S. Kin also has a large network in Canada, so we can do the same thing for our Canadian partners. James also has mentioned that, this fractured marketplace where these influencer agencies are coming and they're offering, sort of the same services, but they're not, because they just don't have the same access to data as we do. And you try and do a campaign where you ask every single influencer to give you a snapshot of their performance, good luck. Like, it's never going to happen. So the value of having that back-end data, whether it's provided by Paladin or whether we have it on our own in the CMS, is really consequential, I think, for a successful brand campaign, and also working with the influencers, because we have a relationship with them, so we don't have to bug them for stuff because we have it already.
It's funny that there's so many people use this word network now, right, for creators. And quite honestly, and you've got all these companies out there saying, I've got an influencer network, I've got an influencer network. Mm-hmm. Really, the first question, whether you're a creator, whether you're a brand, whether you're a distributor, is when someone's claiming that, you should define what your network is. 9.8 times their network is a computer spreadsheet of phone numbers, of the managers, of emails of the creators, and that's it, right? And they put it on a dashboard and they put lipstick on a pig. But ultimately, the question you should be asking is, how is it a network? So what is the back-end data? What is the back-end legal connection do you have to these creators? And the CMS is the number one answer, right? So unless you're out there and you're truly, when you're questioning and you're digging into whether you're going to sign up with a said partner or you're a brand, that's the first question you could ask, because that data from that CMS
Just
is incredibly valuable.
CMS has come up 5 times. Just what's CMS real quick?
Content management system.
Say it again, because
Content management system.
And if
Right.
you're on YouTube and you have a YouTube channel, you can only be linked to one CMS at a time.
Correct.
You can't be linked to 20. You can't believe, and if anybody's saying they are, they're lying.
Right. And I think it's important that the most of the data that's out there is data that we can all get, okay? So data that's off Tubular and a lot of these other companies that are very strong research companies, so by no means am I dissing them. They provide very global top information that's good to look at from an overall aspect. But if you're going to survive as a, as a former MCN, let's say, or that are companies that are pushing influencers, the definition of that data and making it proprietary data that only you can offer will be part of the value prop that helps you survive.
And right now, YouTube is the only platform that offers that. Unless you guys, it sounds like, have come up with an Instagram
Right,
solution.
right.
But yeah, we can't, there is no such thing as a network on Instagram or a network on Facebook, which is a barrier. It's a huge barrier. But, YouTube had lifted that barrier, which gave, really access to MCNs to be successful.
so compared to like regular TV, is all this analytics and the ability to leverage the CMS, is that a competitive advantage, you guys think?
Is it a competitive
Is it a
advantage?
competitive advantage?
Yeah, it's a hugely competitive advantage. I think what has to happen in the space is that what will happen a few years ago is you're going to have there's a mass amount of players claiming to have a network, right? They're all scrambling for these dollars, and probably in the next 12 months, 6 out of 8 of them will cease to exist, right? Because they grab one quick pot of money, then all of a sudden the client's like, wait a minute, I'm not getting those analytics, or this is much harder than I thought, or you said you really had a connection to this talent, you can't get them on the phone. All things like that start to come up in the cracks, specifically during execution. And clients already now, we've had several clients that stopped working with us in the past 6 months. They came back and said, hey, we tried this somewhat programmatic solution, or we tried that. It didn't work. How can we work with you guys again? So I think it's natural in the cycle of the businesses.
Yeah, and I was also going to say, I don't think linear never uses data to inform what they do. I think if they're like, hey, this is a hit show, let me do 8 more seasons, or hey, music plays well on Fridays, let's do another music show when the season's over. So I do think they use it, but not to the level and as granular as digital will go. And I think what I was talking about earlier was when you're thinking about content development for digital, as Univision, for example, I will share a story. I got an email, an angry email one day from a producer saying, I saw that you produced this luchador series. How dare you? I sent it to you. I was like, dude, do you know how many luchador pitches I get a day? A day. If I get another luchador pitch or the new novella pitch, I'm not joking, every week. So now, why pick one luchador series over another? If someone can come in and say, hey, I guarantee you're going to get 20 million views in the first month, that is interesting. That sets it apart from like the 50 other luchador series. So I think that's why it's really important to use data to inform your decisions. And also when you're coming up with your content, figuring out what is your marketing approach, because that is extremely important on the digital web series side. I think we're kind of beyond the days of like, hey, I have an inkling, this is going to be cool. Is there the exceptions to the rule? Yes, but I think the rule is you have to come in with a marketing plan. And that involves influencer, which influencers are you going to have in it, and what platform are you going to use, and how are you going to get the views on day one?
You know, so much, this is a great conversation, because so much of what they're talking about, if you go back like just 10 years of traditional media, and you look at the fact that, it's ironic that American Idol is going to be on ABC this year, because when ABC, the first time it came around, ABC actually turned it down and Fox picked it up. The reason I say this to you is that these were all gut-level decisions in the past. And over the last really 5 to 10 years, data is the key criteria. That started with companies like these guys. And that is critical. To me, it is a tremendous competitive advantage that you know your audience, you know who's watching, you know how long, you know if they drop, you know if your 20-second vampire clip is working as well as your first one and moved on to something else. That is such a powerful tool to have. And I would just say one more thing. If any of you remember, just 2 seasons ago, Fox spent a ton of money on this show called Utopia. Anybody watch that show? Yeah, I did too, so thank you. Thank you for your courage, because I did. I was starting to learn their names and everything, and after like literally 8 episodes, it was gone. And they spent about $50 million producing that show. And so if you can find efficient ways to create your content, to make your bets, to monetize, and then to build your brand and your show, or to look for extensions like they're doing at Vindobona's group, that becomes how you monetize in a very profitable way. So I gave you a nice setup there, but can you talk, Rebecca, about like some of the things that at Vindobona, like 25 years a hit show, people wouldn't think that. That's why I mentioned it, right? You wouldn't think that of all shows of America's Funniest Home Videos where people send in stuff. But you just don't, you keep the rights to that content, and you slice it up, and you sell it all over the world, 100 markets. What's next for Vindobona?
Well, I think everybody's talking about it up here. We're making a very strong technology play because we do realize that, over the content we can lay data. We have a very strong CMS. So, I think that for every creator in the space, and because there's a lot of creators out there speaking on that level, you can also drown in data.
Sure can.
So you want to pick a couple of key points, and then you want to ideate and you want to focus that way. But as a content creator, and I really lead the creation side, I have a guy. Everybody has a guy, but I have a guy. And I'm like, give me 3 key points that my team can work off right now based on the data. And then we create off that. Because otherwise you really will drown in it. But absolutely, we are very technology focused right now, and you would not think that. I mean, we used to have half-inch tapes back there in a closet, overflowing. But we're completely digital now. I mean, we get 3,000 to 5,000 videos a week still, and all of that comes to us online. And so we are constantly thinking data tech first. How can we build off of that and just really scale this business? I mean, right now, look, it's not TV money, right? But those things that's going to change at one point. It really is. So yeah, I mean, data is hugely important. But for creators, I would pick a couple of key points, and I would create off of that. Otherwise, you will lose your mind quickly.
You guys work with a lot of partnerships at Jukin.
Yes.
You're producing some television shows. You're doing a lot of other traditional, more digital. What would be different about what Jukin's doing in your strategy than some of the other ones that are really focused on content creator networks and that kind of thing?
As it relates to working with advertisers, integrating their campaigns or their messaging into the content, which is something that influencers are doing across the board. We own and operate our brand, so when we execute against that stuff, it's people in the building that we can talk to make sure that it gets executed properly. I think that's a little bit different than having tens of thousands or even a couple hundred partners in terms of content creators that you work with. So that allows us to move really quickly and know exactly what we're going to get and be able to control it a little bit more. On the data side, I think about this a lot as it relates to discovery. So you mentioned the differences between television and digital in terms of data. So you're going to go through on television, you're going to go through your channel guide and see what's playing, and your content is always going to be in the same spot on the same channel for ages, right? Like on the digital side, the platforms are determining how the content is getting discovered, and they're changing their mind about that, like on a daily basis, right? So in addition to using data to grow the brands and see what people are interested in, grow the channels, identify which platforms make the most sense for which types of content and how the audiences differ. A lot of that work, for us at least, is to understand how the platforms are prioritizing different metrics in terms of how content is getting discovered, because you could keep the content that has historically worked and then all of a sudden wake up one day and YouTube has decided that that's no longer the type of content that they're prioritizing. So
I mean, to piggyback off that, everybody saw the YouTube advertiser sort of fiasco, right? Where we were just talking about how it was edgier content, that everybody wanted, but the advertisers don't, right? So then it's like all the people that are in the family-friendly space need to go, okay, this is an opportunity that we could jump on, because that's where the advertising dollars are. Nobody wants to put their content against something that is like very sexually explicit or too gross, and YouTube, you know, that's where their money's coming from. So they want to make sure that that content gets served up to as many people as possible.
Okay, I got a quick lightning round for you. This is good stuff. We're going to get to questions, by the way, in about 5 minutes. But a quick lightning round, and I didn't give you guys this on purpose. This cannot be your company. So you guys let your companies off the hook. But what companies in the media space should we be looking at? This audience, what should they be looking at? Like, who's cutting edge, doing great stuff? What's next? I'm just going to pick it. I'm going to start with you, Jennifer, just because I'm going to give the sides time to think a little bit. Who should we be looking at? Like
Well, the one we're really excited about right now is Musical.ly.
Musical.ly.
So if you have like a 10-year-old niece, nephew, kid, they probably have the Musical.ly app on their tablet or phone. But it's, Vine is dead, rest in peace, Vine. But this has sort of been like a new place to discover like these new influencers, because YouTube has become so saturated that a lot of influencers now, they'll try to start on other platforms and then shift over to a platform you could better monetize on. But I think Musical.ly is really interesting, especially for the Hispanic market. The Hispanic market is sort of like in this weird existential crisis, because half the population speaks Spanish, half population speaks English. The one true thing that really connects both of them is music. If you are an English dominant Hispanic, you still listen to reggaeton and, you know, regional Mexican music. So it's actually a really interesting opportunity for us.
This is good. Good start. Give me some names. Why don't I start with you, Rena?
So I think, you know, every digital media company is now trying to get in the sort of world of content creation. And there's a company called Newform Digital that was started by Ron Howard at CAA, and CAA is a large investor. And they're creating content that's native to digital. So when you see big digital stars like Cameron Dallas that are moving over to Netflix and more traditional sort of platforms, it's probably a show that Newform created. So I think that you know, start paying attention to those shows and who made those shows, because chances are it was them.
Good. Sean, give it a stab.
I would also say Musical.ly, if you've got a, 6 to 12-year-old, excuse me, that's it's been growing. And quite honestly, I'd say pay attention to Instagram, right? We forget that Instagram is this small compared to the user base that's potential it has, right? I think Facebook just hit 2 billion, right? And Instagram's at like 700 million, I think. So if you look at its growth and the engagement on it, I think stay focused on that.
That's great.
Donut Media is an LA-based automotive digital publisher that's reinventing the way that younger audiences consume content online related to cars and motorsports.
Donut, spell it?
Donut, D-O-N-U-T, Media.
D-O-N-U-T.
Check 'em out.
Remember, I imagine 3 years ago somebody was saying something about Snapchat, and it made a couple of people billionaires this past couple months ago when it went public. So Donut Media, okay.
Yep.
Rebecca.
On the company side, I would say a brand called Super Deluxe, I think is really innovative in the space. They do things, you know, I think when everybody else was falling off of like Facebook Live and things like that, they were still innovating and I think performing way above the bar that the rest of us had hit. I believe they're owned by Turner. They're really great. I would agree with Musical.ly as well. I think that they filled that Vine space very quickly and very well. And I think that they're just growing at an incredible rate, and we're all over that platform. So I would definitely say any young creators should be in that space, or if you have a young audience, should be in that space.
Good. Josh.
Yeah, I've got two. So in light of adpocalypse and the issues that YouTube has had around brand safety and the advertisers that they've worked with, I think it's really interesting to see Patreon find another way to generate revenue for these creators on the platform. And I read recently, I think they're on track to do $150 million for the year in payouts to creators, which is awesome. And then the other is Zumo, which is a platform that blends digital and traditional in a way that we're finding really interesting and benefiting from. So as I mentioned, discovery on digital being obviously very different than it is on traditional. There's still plenty of people discovering content through traditional channels, and Zumo is bringing digital content into a linear channel or a series of linear channels accessible through the cable guide by working directly with the television set manufacturer. So we've got a Fail Army channel and a People Are Awesome channel and a Pet Collective channel that look like the rest of your normal cable channels, and you probably wouldn't notice that it was delivered any differently than the others. So those are two that I'm excited about.
That's great. So has anyone heard of a show called Awkward Black Girl?
Yes.
Anybody watch it religiously? Okay, I got a couple people here. Well, I'm mentioning that show because if it weren't for YouTube and what these guys have done, that kind of show would have never hit the air. And that's about analytics. It's about finding a niche audience that they can say this niche genre will bring in a certain size audience. I want to say that was, I remember watching it on YouTube, right? And she was doing, and I remember she was doing fundraising. She had a GoFundMe page to raise money for the next episode. So think about you content creators that are out there. You have a different way to test your content. Then HBO picked it up, and while I was here, I was just Googling it. They now have a Awkward Black Girl book. The key thing is franchise. So can you guys talk a little? I throw that out there because that's one that was a original user-generated content that now has gone to a television show on HBO. Maybe there'll be a movie. Can you talk about others like this that are in your networks that make sense for you?
Well, I think it's clear that the franchises of tomorrow are being built in digital, right? If you think about the cycle times for creating a new big blockbuster IP in traditional media, whether that's television or film, it takes 6 years, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why we get sequel after sequel. Many of them are great films, but we've kind of lost a kind of a niche of mid to small tier market, and then also independent film is suffering because of the challenges to break into that medium, right? Whereas on digital, you've got fast cycle times, you have the real-time data, so you know exactly what your audience wants, how your content is performing, and you can iterate, right, to adjust to what kind of meets their needs. So I think we're certainly seeing that. I think that also demonstrates that creators and the media companies that serve them now not only have to be multi-platform, but multi-revenue stream, right? It's not just about advertising income, it's about how do you produce branded content, how do you do premium subscription series, how are you thinking about direct transactional revenue from your supporters, whether that's Patreon, Super Chat, or live streaming kind of tipping, and then also things like e-commerce and affiliate marketing, right? There's so many opportunities for creators to build a brand and to make money, and that's what companies like those to my left are here to enable.
I love it. I hope we've made some of you guys multimillionaires at some point. Tell us about your stock is though. I promised some time for questions, and we have about 5 or 10 minutes. Why don't we have some questions? I see you first, so you go right ahead.
You talked about marketing and the different platforms and being a part of the network, and so I guess my question is, in you guys' opinion, is as an influencer and a creator, is Twitter still a viable platform if you don't already have an audience there? And then also with Instagram and Snapchat, I know there's been a back and forth, which is Snapchat still going to be a good platform, so if you don't have an audience there either, would it make more sense to focus on YouTube and Instagram and some of the other platforms that you guys just mentioned?
Well, I think you have to ultimately focus on where your audience already is, right? So you're going to look at where's your most engaged audience is and look at how you can grow it from there. Just generally speaking, and I think some of the ladies here can comment, overall from a creator aspect, we find that our creators are typically focused on their YouTube and Instagram as the first telling story experience. That's where they're going to curate content longer. That's where they're going to think about content longer. That's where they're going to act as an executive producer, editor, all of that. Versus on Twitter, it seems to be it's more like a mass communication, amplifying promotion of their other storytelling that's on YouTube or Instagram. With Snapchat, it seems to be that it's more just constant communication with their diehard fans, that the storytelling experience there isn't as curated. I can't say if Snapchat or Instagram is better. I think your audience demo particularly will help you decide upon that. But long term, I think Instagram probably will succeed, given that it's part of Facebook, and you've got overall all those analytics and storytelling there, and the ease of going back and forth between the two platforms.
Yeah, I also think it depends on what your goals are. If you're looking to make a lot of money and have a brand sponsor your content, you should probably stick to Instagram or YouTube. Brands aren't sponsoring content on Twitter. They are not really sponsoring content on Snapchat because the analytics just aren't there. It's very opaque. You can't see anything. You can't see how a campaign performs. There is a value in and of itself to just having an audience. So I wouldn't just abandon them if you have audience there. But if you're really looking to grow strategically for brand purposes, I would also say invest your time in Instagram and YouTube because the payout will be bigger.
Yeah, and I think because I think part of it sometimes becomes like, oh my God, another platform. How am I going to manage another platform?
Yeah.
My biggest bone to pick with Snapchat compared to, let's say, Instagram stories now is there's no discoverability. So, if I'm on Instagram and I'm like, hey, I want to learn what's the hottest lipstick right now. I mean, there's ways to search like for hashtags. Snapchat, you're like literally in a black hole. So, I mean, if you already have an audience there, sure, but I personally, if I had limited time in the day and I could only maybe do 2 or 3 platforms, Instagram for sure, YouTube,
Facebook.
Because Facebook video, I think it's something we didn't really touch on a lot. That's going to come back, I think, really big.
It's funny because in another genre, if you look at, I saw a study that says how people are getting their news. There's a huge shift going on in people getting their news on Facebook, as a great example. Huge. I mean, you Google that offline, but it's important. Go ahead, I got your question.
What your experiences have been with FTC letters and all the action that's going on right now, and everyone that's getting them. What's the advice you're giving people? What's happening? Are you getting them?
It's very simple.
Give
it's
the
funny.
30 seconds on that first, though.
They outline it. There's specific guidelines. You just have to go to their site. If you're a brand, read them. If you're a creator, read them. They're very specific. There's always seems to be this air about it. It's very cut and dry, right there. Read it and know them. That's really what. And most brands don't actually do it.
Yeah, we don't do brand campaigns unless you're in compliance.
Right.
We have a hard line rule.
Well, I know people who are getting them for like posting shoes, and they're not being sponsored by a brand. It's not
So I guess,
like the shoes.
yeah, I mean, I guess even if it's an in-kind exchange, even if they just received the pair of shoes from the brand, it still technically needs to be hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored. So anytime you get a benefit from the brand, you have to comply. And, read the guidelines. They're not suggestions. They are the law. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm going to get in the back and I'll come to you guys. Right there, I see you in the glasses in the back.
Yeah, my name is Valerian Bennett. I'm working on a startup called Top Chest, and we're working on technology that allows direct monetization through micropayments. So the idea, kind of continuing with what James said, to allow content creators to get paid directly from viewers. And I'm curious, looking at the other kinds of business models that you guys have been talking about. A lot of it is brand deals. A lot of it's obviously direct advertising. You got subscription. You got micropayments or direct monetization. I'm curious what your balance is in terms of what you guys are doing. How much of it is brand versus stuff going out to subscription sites, and where do you see that trend go?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the Univision Creator Network, I would say a good 50% of our time is sales related. So we're really focused on partnering with brands and executing campaigns that have been sold. Then maybe like 25 to 30% is spent on just talent development. Like, can this person be on TV? Can they host a show? So we'll try to like test people out, pilot different shows. And then the other 30% is literally, why has ads been turned off of this thing, or why didn't I get my check, and stuff I don't want to deal with, but it's part of having a CMS. But I mean, I think I would still say like a big portion of our time with the influencers is trying to sell them and executing those campaigns.
What you're doing might just be enhanced. Are you using blockchain by chance?
Yeah. Can you see the theory?
people, I know that, probably James on the software side, technology companies are spending a lot of time on the technology called blockchain. It's not to get boring, but it's a digital ledger. All these micropayments, quarter cent for royalties, quarter cent for publisher, quarter cent for artists, whatever that is, when you have, it's been so hard to track those things. Blockchain is something that the banking industry has recently approved, and it's a digital ledger that takes a lot of those micropayments and really efficiently changes them. And that will probably create additional business opportunities like the one that you just said you're starting. Congratulations, by the way. We have 3 minutes left. Only good questions now. If it's not a good question, okay, I got you, and then you're the last question. Hat.
Well, I mean, I think from an advertising aspect, I think that the older demo, we talked a lot about YouTube and YouTube video, that 25 to 54 is still lacking, at least in the creator space, but the demand is there. So I would say that at least in our space.
I would agree, and I think there's also a huge appetite for kids content right now.
Yeah.
We see an explosion of growth in kids content being consumed on YouTube and Facebook, and these media companies and also the technology platforms that enable that want to build a safe walled garden for kids to experience that content without interruptive or potentially inappropriate ads being served to minors.
Take you back there, and I had you, and if we have time, I'll get you. All right, just a promise. Go.
Ad spending is still predominantly in broadcast versus digital, I'm surprised because every year the viewership for broadcast is going down. At what point do you think there'll be a tipping point and it'll reverse and there'll be more ad spending on digital?
Very, very long time in the future. TV spending is still actually increasing. The rate at which it is increasing is declining, but it's not going to hit the bottom like the music industry or publishing anytime soon. So people will continue to buy on TV. There's long been this theory that, hey, all of a sudden overnight, $80 billion in TV ad spending. There's an additional $80 billion also in subscription, that the ad spending is just going to flip to digital. I don't see that coming. In fact, I think new budgets are being created as more and more people are doing online marketing, and a lot of that is growing within digital. So digital is exploding and growing at double and triple digit rates, but it's not necessarily stealing from TV.
Well, remember, as it grows, also, they get acquired. Machinima was growing tremendously, then got acquired by Time Warner. So, and you're seeing the same thing in Awesomeness TV and others. So.
And I would say also, TV is still premium because there's a limited amount of places you can place an ad on TV. There's literally a bajillion, I don't even know what the right word would be, places to place ads on digital. So it's just the economy. It's more saturated and it's still cheaper because there's a lot of it out there. Whereas with TV, it's still very selective, it's premium, and it's also, again, going back to the brand safe issues, you know what you're gonna get. It's very clear what you're going to get on certain channels and what the programming is. Where on digital, there's still a little bit of this uneasiness of what am I going to get? What am I going to run against?
I'm going to take you, and then we're going to take you. So go. Last.
So with Facebook, you can directly pick, people in your demographic that you want to market to. But like with YouTube and Instagram, it's not as easy to do those things. So how, with the data that you get maybe from YouTube and analytics that you get, how can you determine when your content is truly, engaging, and how do you capitalize and focus on those things that you should be paying attention to in your analytics in order to increase your growth on a more consistent basis rather than having like a fluke or like a viral video?
I mean, something on YouTube specifically, you guys can chime in on other platforms, but on YouTube specifically, if there's engagement at 3% or above, that to me is an indicator of this is a truly engaged audience. Meaning, even if you have 2 million, 3 million followers, but you have like a 0.01% following, I would much rather work with a smaller creator who has more engagement, because that audience will likely grow and they're probably on the upward trajectory. So I would say for YouTube specifically, if you're seeing trends on certain videos that are like 3% engagement, so look at likes, look at comments, that's an indicator of like, okay, this video is working.
The other leading indicator for YouTube is watch time. Number one, because that's the primary consideration in the search algorithm. So if you want to get discovered, make content that people are going to stay engaged with and watch to completion if possible. The other selfish motivation for YouTube behind that is the longer a viewer is spending time watching content, the more ads they can serve, right? So that leads to ad session starts and therefore more monetization potential for you as well.
I'm going to take a risk. We're 1 minute over, so it's a quick question and we'll quick answer.
To clarify what you said before about the demographics lacking the demand, is there 25 to 54-year-olds?
Well, I think overall, we're constantly being asked more and more to touch and talk to more and more brands are asking to talk to more and more creators that their audiences cater to that. Either that they're in that age group, so they're speaking to that age group, or their audience that are watching them. So generally speaking, on YouTube and Instagram, it's very heavy 18 to 34, right? And while that is a core for brands, that 25 to 54, which television reaches very strongly still, is that one area and audience segment that brands seem to still have a insatiable thirst for, but that we still can't satisfy because there's not enough creators on the platforms to actually fulfill those needs.
Yeah, the audience on YouTube is younger.
Yeah.
And if you want to reach that audience, if that's your goal, you should use Facebook.
Yeah.
Guys, let me just say this. We're 2 minutes over now. Thank you for the audience. And guys, thank you for this great panel.